We're actually going to be talking about MCP. And if you went and watched Tron over the weekend, you may have been one of only 8 people that did. However, we're not talking about the master control program this time. We're talking about something different, model context protocol. Welcome to the Security Boulevard Podcast, a cybersecurity podcast from the Futurum Group. Each episode explores a variety of topics within cybersecurity and the technologies that drive it. You can find us on securityboulevard.com, the Security Boulevard YouTube channel, TechStrong TV, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Before we jump into today's episode, let's meet the panel, starting with my friend Alan. Alan, welcome back.
Tom, thank you. You know, this is my first appearance on the new Security Boulevard podcast. We've been podcasting around the Security Boulevard name since we launched it. I'm Alan Shimel. I'm the founder, CEO of TechStrong Group, and we are the folks who started Security Boulevard, as well as DevOps.com, Cloud Native now, TechStrong AI, TechStrong IT, which is actually a joint venture with our good friends at Tech Field Day, formerly Gestalt IT, and Digital CXO and PlatformEngineering.com, as well as TechStrong TV and all of its various frontiers on the rich media landscape. Beyond that, though, I've been in security for about 30 years. And started several companies, co-founded several companies in we used to call it InfoSec space before it was cyber. And it's a passion of mine, so I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Tom.
Well, we're happy to have you here, Alan, as well as our special guest for this episode, Mr. Scott Robohn. Scott, tell everybody who you are.
Hey, Tom and Alan, great to be with you both. I'm Scott Robohn. I am a happy and grateful serial Tech Field Day delegate. Looking forward to a couple events coming up in the next few weeks. I am a co-founder of the Network Automation Forum, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of my consulting company, Solutional, where we help people rationalize AI adoption and kind of cut through the hype.
Right. And of course, I am Tom Hollingsworth, event lead for Security Field Day and other exciting events within the Tech Field Day business unit at the Futurum Group and one of Alan's coworkers. I did want to call out that it is going to be National Dessert Day. So hopefully you guys are having a sweet treat while you're listening to us. And hopefully it has real sugar in it because it's also National Real Sugar Day. Who knew that? Well, the sugar people did. But I want to talk about a topic today that's actually kind of sweet. And that has to do with AI. But hold on before you race to the comments to tell me that we're talking about AI again. We're actually going to be talking about MCP. And if you went and watched Tron over the weekend, you may have been one of only 8 people that did. However, we're not talking about the master control program this time. We're talking about something different, model context protocol. It's the hot new topic this year that has really driven adoption of a lot of different agentic AI components. But of course, this is Security Boulevard, so you know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the security aspects of it. And Scott, you kind of jumped in with both feet on this topic. So maybe you could kind of introduce to the folks out there, what is it about MCP that makes everybody want to use it? And why is it the security parts of it are starting to maybe keep you up at night?
Well, to give kudos, right? MCP's been with us for 11 months, at the time of this recording. It's really just kind of hit the street very quickly. I'm a networker who has done a lot of network security stuff in my life. And to see yet another product come out so quickly, that wasn't governed by, let's just say, very long processes and other standards bodies, it's pretty amazing to see it. But it is reflective of this typical product life cycle where step 1 is get it to work. Step 2 is find a way to manage it. And then, sometime later, step 179, secure it, right? So there's let's make the packets go, and then we'll figure out how to secure all this later. I have been pleasantly surprised with the integration of OAuth into MCP already. That's a great step and, makes me hopeful in the first, year of its lifetime here, but, miles to go before we sleep on this.
So it's very interesting that you talk about this idea that we need to make it work first and we need to fix it, secure it later. I've heard this before, and Alan's the one who actually brought this up when we were kind of talking about it pre-show. Alan, this feels a whole lot like APIs to me. Is that what it kind of feels like to you?
Well, there is a resemblance, but, invent it, make it run, worry about security later. That's pretty much standard operating procedure in IT for the 35 years I've been here. It's always the caboose on that train, and it's kind of the afterthought. Tom, I got to just one personal pet peeve of mine I got to throw out there. I hate all of these made up holidays and days. I don't know if Hallmark's behind it or what, but I think it's been the bane of it's what led us down a slippery slope. So I don't care about National Sweet Day, Sugar Day, or any of those days. But back to security. This is a typical IT innovation. Wow, we got the greatest thing here since sliced bread. Let's go out, run as fast as we can, and get as much as we can. And in this age of AI, time is condensed, so things are happening faster, quicker, speedier, more velocity. And then, someone says, but wait, what about the security? Scott, I would posit that zero auth wasn't put in for security. It was put in to make it easy to log in these things.
Sure. Yeah, that is certainly an element to it. I'm going to take a small win here where I can, but I totally hear you.
Yeah. I mean, Tom, back to your point, though, yes, this was very analogous to the whole API security thing because, what we're really talking about with these MCP servers, and you're right, Scott, I thought it came out around last January, so I have 10 months, but maybe it was 11. In 10 or 11 months, it has become the de facto standard for how agents talk with agents and other agents within your enterprise. Now, there is a competing standard, sort of competing, called A to A, which is under the auspices of the Linux Foundation, and maybe that'll have better security. I don't know. But quickly, this is the de facto standard for agent-to-agent communication. And, God bless the age of AI. In 10 or 11 months, this thing is it's been around forever. And we had the same thing 3 or 4 years ago. Someone came up with the API economy. And its studies were done that a majority of the traffic going over the internet, was API to API traffic, web to web kind of thing. And all of a sudden, someone said, hey, the most important attack surface left in security? APIs. We need to know what APIs we have, what their configurations are, what their security posture is. And until we have that, we have a blind spot to a majority of the traffic on the internet. Scott, you're in the space. You've heard the stories.
Yeah, I think so. I couldn't agree with you more, right? And some of the work we've done in Network Automation Forum, we put up a blog post a few months ago that's just a collection of community comments, not necessarily on API security, but API quality and usability. And we definitely caught a thread of, there's a lot of inconsistent, publishing of API specs, people, getting half functionality, 3/4 functionality, and that being a suppressor to actually driving automation for network and security equipment. So there's room to improve there for sure. Maybe that's more of an issue in the network element world where they're trying to be more API forward and move away from, the CLI addiction that so many of us, especially Tom, still have. Sorry, Tom. But there's got to be room for improvement there, from a security and functionality and consistency perspective.
So let me offer this, because I think you're both right that sometimes it feels like the security that we get with these rapidly developing protocols is more happenstance than it is by design. Alan, you brought up the fact that, using authentication mechanisms that just happen to be secure to ease user login may have had a serendipitous benefit. What about, using HTTPS calls for APIs? Like, I'm sure that wasn't top of mind for them originally. Like, oh yeah, we'll just do this or we'll do that. oh, hey, it just so happens that we've secured this communications channel by default years ago because everybody on the internet did. And when you look at the way that a lot, especially things like Electron apps that are basically just web browser wrappers anyway, we've arrived at a state of security that is maybe a little bit harder to configure on the back end to begin with, but ultimately is more secure in the long run because the fundamentals of what we've done have changed so significantly. Do you feel like that? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought, Tom.
I was just going to say, do you feel like that the people kind of behind the scenes that have been working diligently to do this have done more to bring the state of security forward than those people that are living on the bleeding edge?
Yeah. So I will tell you the big issue in API security is most organizations didn't even know what APIs they had open, what APIs were talking to which APIs. And you can't defend something you don't even know you have, right? Yes, the communication, via HTTPS protocol and in transit is great. But if you don't know what you have and where it's going, it's good to know that at least while it's going, it's encrypted. But you still you still have a fundamental issue. That being said, though, funny thing happened with API security. There was a whole more than a cottage industry. There was a whole bevy of API security companies that came forward. The big one was called No Name. And then there was another one that got, I believe, bought by Red Hat. And then there was a half a dozen of these. Traceable AI, Traceable AI was another part of Harness now. As often happens in technology, and Tom and Scott, you've probably both seen this, today's product became tomorrow's feature.
Sure.
And so API security, including API discovery, API communication encryption, API configuration, has now been subsumed into some of these, platforms that we have around security.
It's funny. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
Oh no, that was my thought.
So I've had the real honor of doing some work associated with DARPA through something called the Embedded Entrepreneur Initiative, where DARPA works with lots of startups in the security space and other technologies that come up with really interesting piles of tech. I won't call them products, right? But they come up with fundamental artifacts and pieces of functionality. And they need help figuring out, should this be a standalone product? Should this be a feature on somebody else's platform? Or you're too late with this, it already exists as a product or a feature on another platform. But it's been amazing to see those elemental, I did some really interesting work on IAM issues in graph theory with a particular company, and so tried to figure out, does this belong somewhere? Turns out Wiz already had that covered. The integration piece is really important here. Many companies come along with pieces of fundamental technology, and how well they're integrated into bigger platforms, bigger products matters. We see it. We see it in the network automation space. Like, there's really cooperative, open working together between lots of different technology providers. How well you do those integrations really matters on how secure it is in the long run and what ease of use looks like.
Yeah. And I don't mean to scare anyone out here, though, but let me frame the real problem we're dealing with, though. Right? APIs and APIs talking to APIs were great. I think as we sit here now on the dawn of the AI age, or in the early days of this AI era, the automation that API to API gives us almost seems quaint, because it was automation without autonomy. As we enter agentic AI, and what does agentic AI really mean? It means we're going to have autonomous agents who aren't just doing a task. They're completing missions, multitask missions, autonomously. And in order to do so, they need to speak to each other. because each one of these agents are in their own multitask autonomous mission. If we don't secure these things, the threshold for chaos, right? The potential, what could go wrong here is unlike anything we've dealt with, right? I'm not going to go Y2K on you, but you know what I mean? This may be a case where we can't wait for the proverbial stuff to hit the fan before someone says, oh, we should really think about security here. We've got to get in front.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And there's this whole body of work around, okay, what do agents need before we even think about trusting them to operate autonomously? They're going to need identities, just like people have identities. We're going to need to be able to control access to other resources based on their assigned identity. They're going to be able to start firing off 5G calls at some point, right? So I've got to watch how that filters down into not just my network, but specific pieces of the network. Does every agent need to have its own virtual SIM or eSIM to watch it as we make calls? I agree that this is a huge body of work that needs to be addressed. I also see attenuation. See what I did there with the 5G comment, or friction against allowing autonomy to happen too quickly. Like, I think there's a huge process that vendors and system integrators need to go through to get enterprise IT shops comfortable with autonomous operation. Some are, very few are more eager than others, but paying attention to what does it look like to develop trust in autonomous systems is going to be a huge gate to adoption in just about any organization.
Scott, you're talking like a security guy.
So let me ask this question, because I'm sure someone in the comments is already thinking about it. Yes, there is this hesitance from the IT departments to move too fast, right? Because we've seen what happens when someone rolls out an automated autonomous system that makes decisions. Either they don't like it because they feel like they're cut out of loop, or worse, it makes one mistake that then it gets amplified.
Right.
Is the speed aspect of it coming from the IT departments, or is it coming from the decision makers above that who said, well, I was told by Sam Altman that this thing will just run my company for me and I don't need to think about it. But why is it taking so long for this to happen? You guys promised that this was going to be done already, while everybody else behind them is like, whoa, wait a minute. We're not quite there yet.
I've already laid off the people I was replacing.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Yeah.
No, so let me give you an interesting factoid I heard at a conference recently. I think it was 60% of CIOs are asking for bigger budgets for IT because they're being pressured by their boards to do more with AI.
Yep.
And in order to do more with AI, they need to spend more on AI, and so they need to increase their budgets. So, Tom, that's your answer in my mind.
I believe that that's real. I haven't seen that statistic, but that totally matches conversations I've been having, right? And if you think about budgets moving from actual personnel costs to paying for tokens for agents to run, like, that's a real shift I think we're going to see over the next few budget cycles. That's directly follows that trend. I had something really important to say there, and I've dropped it. Tom, do you want to take it?
Well, look, tonight I got to talk, Tom, your point about people willing to trust autonomous. So I had an interesting thing happen to me on Saturday morning. I had to go up to visit a relative in a hospital up about 2 hours from the house. And I took my wife's car, usually drive it. And I got on the highway 95, and this nice agent's voice came on and said, oh, we detect you're in a location, not a location or whatever, a highway, and you could use the Assist Plus driving. Just press the button on your steering wheel. I pressed the button on my steering wheel. Now, I've used cruise control. We've probably all used cruise control before, right? It takes a little getting used to, but this was full on driving my car.
Sure.
So I will tell you that for the first 15 minutes, my heart rate was probably around 180. And I wasn't touching the steering wheel, but I had my hands right over because I'm waiting for something to go wrong and I could go like this. And that took me maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And I kind of loosened my hands up a little bit. My heart rate went down a little bit. I wound up with, my hands on my lap over here. But it was so goddamn excuse my language. It was so goddamn stressful. Then I realized I'm better off shutting it off because I was too stressed out, waiting for calamity to strike. I think there is that. However, over time, I think people get used to it. And I think that's what we're going to see here.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
To your point, I think that there's something you brought up there. Like when people get used to the idea of it running, it disappears into the background, right? Like they know that occasionally they might have to touch the steering wheel or something like that. But there are also videos out there of what happens when the system fails. I think one of the ones was, it actually was a major national news article where a self-driving vehicle would not stop at a railroad crossing because it's not something that it recognized and it didn't know that it was supposed to stop there. Those are the kinds of exceptions to the rule that people focus on when they're talking about these things. Well, what happens if it uses the wrong OS on the upgrade? What happens if it does this? And they're ignoring 95% of the things that work most of the time. Yeah, my calendar program might accidentally schedule me for a call at 2 a.m. instead of 2 p.m. once every 9 months. It's the rest of the time that it just works that I'm just oblivious to. So is that part of the problem we're running into here, is that people are just oblivious to the fact that we are securing these things, that we are trying our hardest to prevent them from becoming problematic. Something as simple, Alan, you brought up is like being able to steal data as quickly as possible. Rate limits, right? Like if I can't pull more than 1,000 requests from this particular device per minute.
Sure.
Not a problem for a human, not a problem for a well-written script, a problem for somebody who's trying to dump as much data as possible before they get discovered and ejected. Like, do we need to start thinking about security in a different way to make it seamless so that people just assume that everything works?
Well, so your comment, Tom, brought me back to what I forgot a few minutes ago. And I'll just say this is all representative of a good and necessary tension between the innovators and the implementers, right? And I think the innovation around MCP and so many other things that we've seen has been awesome. And that's great. And we need people who are on the bleeding edge, hacking their way through the jungle and creating a path for others to follow eventually. And it's the responsibility of the people who are procuring, implementing, and operating the tech to say, whoa. Let's make sure this is hardened for my use cases, that I've kicked the tires sufficiently to make sure I can have a trust in it. And even if it's not full-blown autonomous operation on day one, I've got something in place where I can start and I can map out a plan to say, what does building trust in this system look like? I think we're always going to have those two, things engaged in that tension. On one hand, it kind of is what it is. On the other hand, I think it's good, and iron sharpens iron in this case.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, here's the other thing, though, guys, and I've told this story before. I was doing a podcast for Network World about, I guess it's got to be around 2010, so 15, 16 years ago. And I had the CEO at the time of MongoDB, right, and Couchbase, two of the biggest, what we called NoSQL databases of its time. And back then there was a lot of discussion, that the security in these things was non-existent. And I remember asking them both, I said, gentlemen, a lot of people say NoSQL stands for no security. What's the deal with security in your products? And they both agreed and said this out loud. I couldn't believe they said it out loud. We will put in more security when our customers demand more security. And as much as security people, and Scott, I'm one too, we sit here and think security is the most important thing in the world. How could you roll something out without security? If customers who are running and have established MCP as the de facto standard are not saying, what about the security?
Right.
Can't blame the producers, the developers, for not doing more about security. And that's the world we live in.
Well, it's a fair point, and I'll turn it into the last RFP that you read, right? There's a security requirements section in there, most likely, but it's not the first section. It's usually buried below, right? Because there is, we're worried about that. Make the packets go, make the product work first. Is it going to fit the business need that I need to drive in my enterprise? And oh yeah, by the way, can you show me it's secure? That it's not the primary thought.
No. I mean, this was a big thing, so I started DevOps.com in 2014, 2013. And then within a year or two, DevSecOps really showed its head. And there are a lot of the DevOps people, you don't need you don't need sec in the middle of DevOps. DevOps has security built in. There's no such thing as DevSecOps. It's just a marketing term. And I was one of them, I'll admit. But I came to the realization that you did need DevSecOps. You did need to put security in the middle because you needed people, both security people and non-security people, to recognize that security was important and it had to be part of the equation.
Yeah.
And maybe we need MCP.
Model Context Security Protocol?
Yeah. Something with security right in the middle, because that's what it's going to take for us to make security, if not front and center, at least, where it belongs.
Well, I will take that, and I remain basically hopeful on all of this. And I would say, what if we could have this more unified view of what's in our SIMs, what's happening from a security perspective, what's happening from a network observability and streaming telemetry perspective? What if I could even pull stats on, what's happening with my compute platform and different application performance? I think LLMs provide a unique opportunity to provide an integrated view of what's happening across those domains. And I'd love to start a movement with you all right now to push our vendors to say, why not give me a unified view across my whole IT ops? Doesn't mean those silos go away. There is specific expertise that's needed in security, in networking, in application performance. But if I can create this shim layer or this umbrella that brings it all together, I think that could be really powerful.
Yes, we can. Tom, you were going to say something.
I agree, Scott. You're just going to need to upgrade to the Enterprise Plus AI license for the tool. That's going to be eye-wateringly expensive while I build it. And then everything's going to be rosy. But
nice. I believe you.
I go back to something that is kind of one of my favorite points to bring up here, and that's the idea that security that works well is not good because nobody knows that it's there. And all you have to do to figure that out is try to drive onto any military base in the world.
Sure.
You have a government ID, you're supposed to be there, and they're still going to check it. Think about the old RSA tokens, which are now apps on our phones, or something as simple as a passkey, which is something I know that Alan loves. Is there's still a pop-up, right? Hey, confirm that you want to log into this website using this passkey. That little tiny bit of friction proves that the security is there. It's as simple as having a little dialog box popping up saying, we're automatically logging you in with your credentials because you configured SSO. You're awesome. When we let people know that, right? There's a story of IBM, because I used to be an IBMer, I was an intern there, and the road that went around the plant in Rochester, Minnesota was used as a shortcut by everybody in the community to get to Home Depot a little bit faster. And if you are familiar with any legal precedent in the United States, you know what an easement is, where if I have unfettered access to a road for more than 1 year, then then that is now a public road and I can't do anything about it. So every year, for 1 day a year, IBM would close the checkpoints at the front of the building, which were never otherwise closed, and check IDs for people going through to make sure they were IBM employees. Their stated goal was to make sure that they didn't create an easement on that road. But the secondary goal was to remind people that there is a security aspect here, even if it's not very present. Now, at the facility itself, you still had to use a badge to get in. This was in 2001. It's like, you had to swipe your badge, and, you had the doors were all locked and everything. I will say that after I left and everything happened at the end of the year in 9/11, those checkpoints closed, and everybody getting onto the facility had to check in for, I think it was 2 years before they would start allowing people to go through without having to show their ID. Like, we have to make sure that people understand that there is security in the system. Otherwise, either A, they're not going to care, or worse, in my mind, they'll just assume that it's there. And then you'll see the breach notification. Like, why were you storing all the passwords in plain text in an Excel file? That's bad.
What? I'm deleting now.
Gentlemen, any final thoughts on this topic? I wish we had an hour and a half to talk about MCP and APIs and AI and everything, but I think this is definitely a fodder for another episode.
Well, I would say I'm really interested in what AI tools can do to help us think about new security architectures, more holistic security architectures. I think there's really interesting promise there as well. So another follow-up episode, Tom.
Absolutely. Alan?
I would say this to wrap the bow around this one. Yes, in 11 short months, it's become the de facto standard. As I sit here today, though, don't ask me if it's going to be the standard next year, because you don't know. This stuff is happening so quickly.
Yep.
We don't know if a better mousetrap comes down the road here, and MCP, what? That's archaic, right? So let's not get, we don't have to pull the emergency brake quite yet. Secondly, it has only been 11 months. Security does, especially holistic, organically kind of embedded security, takes time. We're not at the end of the game here. We're at maybe the end of the beginning, if that. And there's still plenty of time to get security right with MCP.
Well said, sir. I want to ask, you two are both very busy folks, but I'm sure that you have a lot of great stuff going on. Alan, what are some cool things you've got coming up that people should be checking out?
Well, I am on TechStrong Gang 4 or 5 days a week, every morning from 9:30 till, I guess, 10:15. So, and we talk a lot about all this stuff there. I will be, actually, I'm not sure when this podcast will actually air, but I'll be at the Qualys RockCon, Risk Operations Conference this week. I'll be at KubeCon in November, right? We'll be broadcasting live from there. And I mean, you could, I publish about 20 articles a week on the various TechStrong sites, so you could follow me there. But I'm usually not hard to find.
Scott, what have you got coming up that people should pay attention to?
So for Network Automation Forum, we have our next event coming up in November, the 17th through the 21st in Austin, Texas. We're always looking for more automation of security content. So the agenda is closed for this one, but keep it in mind for future events. There's that adjacency between the network and network security. I'm very personally interested in seeing how that goes together. I will see you all at the upcoming AI Field Day and the next networking field day coming up in late October and then November. And I'm always driving interesting conversations on network operations and IT operations on the Total Network Operations podcast. So give it a listen.
Absolutely. And don't forget that for Tech Field Day, we have an exciting month going on. Stephen is actually going to be at Tech Field Day Extra at Net Insight this week. Next week, we have Cloud Field Day. Week after that, we have AI Field Day. The week after that, we have Networking Field Day. Just head over to techfieldday.com and check out the calendar because we're going to be busy and we definitely want you to take part in it too. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Security Boulevard Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, we would love it if you would subscribe on YouTube or in your favorite podcast application of choice so you don't miss an episode. I'm a fan of Overcast, but whatever you want to use is great with us. We'd also love it if you'd leave us a rating and a review because that does help the show grow and help us find new audiences. This podcast is brought to you by SecurityBoulevard.com and the Futurum Group. If you want to check out show notes and see the schedule for future episodes, head over to SecurityBoulevard.com, the TechStrong TV website, or if you are a fan of watching us on TV, use the TechStrong TV app. It's available on Apple TV, Roku, and any other smart device. Don't forget that we are also on social media. You can follow us on X or Twitter and LinkedIn. Just look for Security BLVD for more content. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you all next week.